Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on the Payoff, I've been chasing Angie Wang for a while to get her on this podcast, and I finally got her. She's so cool to share her time with us and share her an incredible story of recovery. A lot of that story is actually illustrated in her movie MDMA. You can get it on Amazon Prime. It's a really cool movie. It goes back to the 80s and her life as a big-time drug dealer, synthetic drug dealer and drug maker, producer, when she was in college. And of course, we're talking about somebody who's an addict, and we're also talking about somebody who's closing in on 5 years sober. And she walks it, she talks it, and is in the middle of the boat and is inspiring. So this is truly a conversation we're blessed to have, and I know that I really enjoyed it, and I know you will too. But first, Kevin Souza. Looking good.
How are ya?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Where are you?
We made it happen.
Are you in the Bay Area right now?
No, I live in LA.
Okay, so you're in LA. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm in Hollywood. And basically, it's like the fucking Walking Dead apocalypse right now here.
Why do you say that?
You know what? Because there's so much fucking fent and meth now. And there's already this like despair, and then people just get fucking pulled under and they start living on the streets, and their humanity bleeds out of them. It's upsetting.
How long have you been in LA?
Since 2016.
So in the 8 years you've been there, or plus or minus a little bit, how much worse has that gotten? Like that Walking Dead scene with the increase of fentanyl and those kinds of drugs?
I think it's an order of magnitude worse. You know, there used to be, I think also COVID helped, kind of tore the ass out of all of us, quite frankly. But, especially in these big metropolis centers, like New York, San Francisco, LA, it added to the sense of hopelessness, you know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people, and then, fentanyl now is across our borders in terms of the production, right? Yeah. It came from China to then Mexico, and it was only a matter of time until they started manufacturing it here. So once you see it, it's like a fucking wildfire. It's really sad.
I know you're from Newark, right? That area, like North Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm from Philly, and like Kensington, Kensington, which is an area of Philly, is like that is literally like a zombie town. I mean, there's it's the fentanyl, the heroin, some of the other shit. I mean, people are just walking around, literally looking like the apocalypse, like you said.
Yeah, it's really sad. I walk my dog around town still. I'm really not afraid. I kind of grew up in areas like this, and I don't know. I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm not really afraid, but I'm just more sad. I'm just more sad that people, I'm like, it's human beings living in this like hell on earth, basically.
Well, by the way, talking to you and learning about you, like there's not a whole lot of fear there. I mean, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, but I mean, you're certainly...
I have rage that covers my fear. It protects that soft underbelly, you know what I mean? So like I fly into rage if I'm upset about something.
So I want to start with your
great for those who love me.
So your story, so you're coming up in March, as we say, like God willing, you'll have 5 years sober, right? So you're
Yes, I'm looking forward to my head popping out of my ass. That's what everyone says, right?
Well, I remember when I was 2 years sober, somebody asked me to speak somewhere, and I gave what I thought was this impassioned, like, experience, strength, and hope. And I was on cloud nine, and people were like, just take it easy. Like, take it, like, we'll see. And it was true, like, look, I think honestly, there's guys walking around today with a day that have a better spiritual condition than I do right now. I don't know that it matters. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how, but for me, like, the body of work, I definitely have grown. I mean, you're pretty experienced and evolved in life, and that's what we're going to talk about. I mean, and you tried to get sober for a little while, right? Like, kind of in and out.
Oh, dude, I ran the rooms for like 20 years. Probably. The very first time I hit an AA meeting, my daughter, who is now, she's going to be 25, was a baby in my arms. So,
And now she's in recovery.
She is.
Yeah.
She's been like 10 months. God willing. Yes, not.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. So we'll go into your story, and I want to talk to you about your life, your career, obviously getting sober, MDMA, the movie, and I have my own curiosities. What's true, what's not.
Everyone fucking, I know. Everyone wants to know. I mean, if I just did the total truth, you'd be bored out of your mind, because you'd be like, oh, there she is, hungover, lying on the sofa, watching, General Hospital.
Well, really, when the movie starts and it says, there's something about, I was a kid growing up in the 80s. When it just says 1984, you're like, I'm in. And then you're at a club, and you're doing a line right away. It's really cool.
That's how you open a fucking movie.
So
open a line.
So you grew up in Newark and like North Jersey, right?
No, I grew up kind of all over the place. So New York, I was born in Queens, New York, New Jersey, like focused around North Jersey. And my mother like left when I was really young. So she actually disappeared from my life for like 5 years and reappeared in the Virgin Islands on the island of St. Croix. So I was bounced all over the place. Yeah.
And you were with your dad pretty much, who was working in the restaurant business, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
So what was your childhood like, as far as like, traumas and substance being around it?
So, the ACE study, I'm like a 9 out of 10 on that fucking quiz. So it was a lot of, it was a dark period, definitely. I was really lonely. I don't think I really was in touch with that for a long time. Like, I remember being in a therapist chair, and she's like, that sounds horribly frightening to have like your mom gone. She took your brother. You're all alone in this like apartment. Your dad, God bless him, he worked in the restaurant until late. He also isn't, I think he's one of us. I know we're not supposed to diagnose, but
yeah,
he would go out drinking until like really late at night. So I was often left to my own devices. So I always thought that booze was like this glamorous, like, indication that you had made it, like if you could dance around in a fancy dress and a sparkling, with a champagne flute. I remember my dad once took me to Windows on the World in the World Trade Center before, obviously, all came down. But it was like this magical night, and he let me sip a little bit of champagne out of this like beautiful crystal flute, and I was like, oh, it's the key to happiness. It's the key to beauty.
How old were you?
Success. I was like 10.
Okay.
So that was like one big highlight in my childhood. So I always held on to it, and to me, an alcoholic was like someone who was like fucking passed out in the street. Like, nobody really back then knew about addiction. Nobody really talked about it. There was like, we always grew up in like pretty challenging neighborhoods, I would say. So there was always people fucked up and loaded all over the place. But, as a teenager, it became my best friend.
So when did it start to pick up? Like you grow up, it's you and dad pretty much, right? I mean, and he seems like he did the best he could.
He did. I just came from this visit back to New Jersey, and I had been dreading it. Like it took me 20 years to go back to the house that like, it actually is not the same house that like I grew up in, but like he moved, and I walked in and I was like, I saw like all these, I don't know, artifacts from my childhood. You know what I mean? Like the same yellow table that we had when I was a kid, and like, stuffed animals from my childhood. at first I like completely lost my shit. I was like texting my friends. I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. This fucking feels horrible. I gotta get out of here. I ran away from this. I can't believe I'm back here in this fucking shit. And then I called on my tools. I hit a meeting. I talked to my sponsor, and I've just prayed and asked for guidance. And my little voice said, you know what, you got to be the one to fucking conjure the light now. Like you've done enough work. You're a grown woman. You're not a kid anymore. You're not powerless. You can call it in. And honestly, I like fell in love with my father all over again. So
Wow.
I remembered all these, like, you know, it's different, right? When you look at something through a different lens. Like at first I was like, why the fuck would he keep these like disgusting old like stuffed animals? You know what I mean? They're like dirty. I think I puked on one, like gross. And then they became, I could see them through a different lens, which was like just tokens of his sentimentality, of how sentimental he is, right? So once that anger, hi, kitty.
Hey.
Once that anger sort of like, once I can let that down, that's where the juice is, right?
And the light
Because
comes
that's
in.
my armor. Yeah, it is. It's like you got to scoop all this shit out so you can get that. Like that's basically that's it. And you can get, you know, every day I do start my day. I'm shit about the third step prayer. Like it's just too many words and it's archaic language. So I'm just pretty much like, hey God, can you just fucking please tell me where to be, put me in the right place at the right time to be of maximum service. I try to live my life like that.
Well,
So
you just described something, and I think that for me is a game changer. Like if I go to whether it's maybe a vacation or a family trip I don't want to go on, or if I can hit a meeting, I mean, it really does
yeah,
change. First of all, there's a real like tip of the cap to recovery, and like, hey, I'm putting this first. I'm now going out of my way in a city where I don't live to find a meeting around people like I absolutely do not know. I know them, but I don't know them, and
right.
it's a real shot in the arm most of the time, if not all. To do
Yeah.
that, and it's really cool to hear you tell that story because it changes your perspective, and all of a sudden now you're looking at your father through a different lens. I mean, of course, you mentioned you were able to call on yourself, but it's pretty interesting.
Sobriety has been the entry ticket to like a fucking brand new way of seeing the world and being of service and like feeling connected to people. I grew up so lonely, right?
Yeah,
So I feel like in the rooms, you know, like obviously we have that connective tissue of all being addicts and alcoholics, but it's more than that, you know, like we really try to conjure the best version of ourselves for that room. And I know that for me, I've been really lucky to have just, I've manifested great tribe, you know. And my daughter gave me this big compliment the other day. She was like, you make looking old look okay. And I was like, fuck you, Brett. But she but she was like, no, like you, and she goes, you taught, and thank you for teaching me how to take care of my relationships. Like I've watched you nurture your relationships and show up for people and really, like, you know, we always like remember each other's birthdays and give each other cakes and just try to really take care of each other, check in with each other when we know that the other person is going through a hard time. So she's like, I think it's a beautiful gift, right? To have been able to see that. Like she's like, Mom, even when you were drinking, you still tried to show up as a good friend. I mean, I was fucking not really, I didn't have the capacity to really show up in a real way, right?
yeah.
I also just hated myself. So, you know, I always say that you can't really be a truly compassionate being if you fucking hate yourself, right?
Well, and
So,
that's what like a lot of recovery is, like loving that person
yeah,
that you maybe used to dislike or were shameful of.
yeah.
That's a
You have
huge.
to reclaim.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to reclaim all those pieces of yourself.
So when you started to ramp up, like you mentioned, you go to the World Trade with Dad, and you have that champagne. When does it start to kind of like, I don't even want to say go off the rails, but you notice now looking back with the knowledge you have, like, wow, this was alcoholic and addictive
Yeah.
from early on.
From my first real drink, honestly, from the get-go. My father got remarried when I was like 12 to a woman who was 21. So you can imagine that didn't last very long. But she was a total alcoholic, like tons of, like looking back now through the lens of a grown woman, I can see like, oh my God, all this trauma. You know, she was really stunted. She was completely enmeshed with her mom who lived with us too.
Oh, wow.
And So she and her mom come like 4 o'clock, they would start mixing up the gin and tonics, and they would fucking pound. They would get hammered. And I'd be like, whoa, what is happening here? Like and she was a woman who like I kind of despised, but I also was like desperate to have her love me,
Yeah. Yeah.
So when she offered me that first drink, I was like, yeah, sure. I remember, gin doesn't taste great. I was like, oh God, gross. But I loved the feeling, right? I loved that warmth, and I got wasted, hammered. And I remember always being like, oh, what a great go-to. So I had some, well, it's in the movie, some early sexual trauma, which I think really kind of pushed me over the edge. And just, I was like, well, I guess I'm a drinker. I guess I'm a partier. I loved the escape, right? I loved the excuse to be reckless, and just the total buy-in to that narrative that I was like a fucking broken, damaged piece of shit. I was like, you know what? Fine. Fuck it. I'll show you how fucking damaged. I'll show you how fucking angry and damaged, I can be. So I just raged around like that during my teens.
But you kept your shit together. I mean, you seem like you were a good student. You get into college. Like, you weren't like a fucking burnout dropout.
It was always, I come from the generation of Taiwanese who came over here. They were like the cream of the crop, right? Like, they basically were like, if you wanted to fucking leave the country, you had to be, you were rounded up, and you had to take this test. You had to go to the top schools, and then you had to top score in like the top percentage of everyone who had taken this national test. And then you were like, you could leave. And the thinking was that they'd get educated and then come back. Of course, nobody fucking went back. But my parents were that generation. So it was always hammered in me that you had to do well in school. And I also think that, I'll just fucking be completely blunt. Like, so these two dudes, one of whom I had a massive crush on when I was 16, got me hammered. And well, I mean, I got hammered. I'll own that. But they basically like dragged me out into this tunnel and both fucked me, and like then dropped me off at home like a piece of garbage. And I was like, this never happened. This never happened. And by the way, and then I would have to see them around town and be like, oh, fuck. And, it was so gross I just felt horrible every time I saw them. It definitely informed my drinking, but it also was like, I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like, you people will never fucking see me once I graduate. Like, I am getting the fuck out of Dodge. And my ticket out was, I was always told, like, you're pretty smart. You're smart. You're smart. I tested well. I'm lucky that I'm gifted with a solid intellect.
Yeah.
So,
but it's funny, right? As smart as you are and as brilliant as you are, who knows what to do with a situation like that? As a guy, I can't even begin to comprehend what that is like to go through. But then you stuff it. It never happened.
It wasn't until recently, this past year, that I like really kind of had this like big cathartic moment around it. And even when I was shooting, I didn't even conceive of it. Like, I was a pretty evolved like woman. I had been in therapy. I had done work on myself. I was very like, I did work with at-risk kids and heard their stories, and like intellectually I understood that, No,
you oversaw an entire like nonprofit to help these kids out. Yeah.
I ran a nonprofit called GROW, Global Resiliency Outreach Work.
And this is in your drinking in the latter stages, kind of.
I was in and out, right? So I would get sober for like a year and a half, 2 years, but I never could hold on to it. I would just let go, So, yeah. So it wasn't until I shot the movie, and that's that scene of the tunnel, the tunnel scene, and my AD was like, "Oh, it's the rape scene," and I'm like, "Oh no, it's not a rape. She's just really drunk." And then I was like, "Oh fuck!"
Yeah,
like it was a whole different perspective, because everyone on set was like, "It's a rape.
It's dark.
It's pretty, and I think it happens with some level of regularity." I've heard this story over and over again.
Yeah.
I think it's starting to shift. I think we're starting to like raise awareness around it, and people, and I think people who have been through it are more it's a safer place to be able to like come forward and speak their truth.
And
So,
that truth, I mean, I would imagine that carries some serious weight to these younger people coming up, and they hear that, you know, it's the same strength that if you share it in sobriety, right? It's like, you know, as you never want to wish that on anybody, but you can turn that pain into, you know, helping someone else out, really, even before anything would ever happen.
Yeah. I feel like going through all that shit carves a deeper capacity for empathy, right? Like
yes.
you probably don't know, but I'm actually doing my practicum now at the rehab, like to become a therapist, marriage and family therapist. My MFT,
Awesome.
I'm getting my MFT.
Yeah.
So like your brother.
Yeah.
And then,
Thank you for mentioning him. You're the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm doing my hours now at the same rehab where my daughter got sober. And I get to work with this woman, Kathleen Murphy, who's like, oh, like I feel like I'm fucking singing backup for Aretha Franklin. But I share these things in my groups because I'm like, no, I'm going to give you some hope. Like if I made it through, you can.
Yeah.
And by the way, you know, it feels like being back at Breathe feels like the hero's journey. Like I feel like I've come full circle because I sat in a family group with my daughter like 5 years ago, so bereft after having found her OD'd and like and having to come to terms with like, you know, my daughter's a fucking fentanyl addict. And just living with that like gut-wrenching fear that I was going to lose her. So to go back there now in this capacity really does feel like a hero's journey. And I'm always like, I'm filled with gratitude every time I get to work with people there. And it is that I feel like now all the fucking stupid shit in my life makes sense. It's all like clicked into place, you know, and I can conjure that and I can hold space for people who have been through a lot of similar things.
You touched on that about, I mean, that is a major turning point in your life or a touchstone for your daughter's recovery and maybe yours when you found her OD'd. And you basically, you saved her life.
Yeah, it was in the room right around the corner from here. You know, it just so happened that I had decided, like it was right after my movie dropped, I had coming off this dizzying kind of like, you know, circuit of like press and film festivals and, you know, screenings and stuff like that. And I was drinking a lot. And I remember looking at it. This is so vain. I looked at a picture of myself and I was like, it looks so puffy. Ew. I'm like, I better like take it easy on the drinking for a while. Cause I always knew my drinking was an issue.
Yeah.
I always knew. But at that point I was like, fuck it, man. Like I'm fucking alcoholic. So alcoholics drink alcohol. But at that point I was like, you should pump the brakes for a little while. So thank God, because, you know, our bedrooms are at opposite ends of the condo. And I remember thinking like, she's going to be late. Like, and she had just had some fight with her boyfriend. And I was like, I'm just going to go check on her in her room. So I went in and she was fucking not in the room. You know what I mean? Like she was blue lips and like ashen white and not breathing at all. So, you know, I think we all have a clean line to our higher power when we can clear up enough shit. And this was enough fear and trauma that it just like my higher power screamed in my head, breathe for her, you got to breathe for her. So I always say that I'm not proud that I never took a CPR class, but I just kind of somehow knew what to do. And I, you know, pinched her nose and threw her head back and started breathing for her. And I remember I could see her chest kind of like rise and fall. And then I pulled back and her lips had turned pink again. And I was like, all right, good. And then like testimony to, you know, her then 19-year-old body, her eyes flew open and she was like, Mom, you're so fucking loud. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna beat the living shit out of you, you little fucking rat. But, you know, I always preface this with like, I don't pretend to be any kind of like weird mystic or anything, but I just report now exactly what happened. And like for a second, I got to tell you, I was not in the room. I was like, I remember very clearly standing next to my daughter's grave. And I remember like wind hitting me. And I remember my body like racked with grief. And I remember the feeling of being like, fuck, now I got to face like this whole expanse of life without my daughter, who really is my soulmate. I like gave birth to my soulmate. I love that kid. Even though she's a fucking rat. She answers to that, actually. She answers to the little rat. But and then the next second I was tossing up this baby, this like I believe it's my not yet conceived granddaughter up in the air. So for me, I mean, look, I'm a fucking fanciful girl. I'm a filmmaker. I like imagery. So it could like whatever. You take it with a grain of salt. But for me, I took it as a really powerful inflection point in my life. And I was like, I fucking reject option number one. And I will fucking do anything that I need to do to get to option number two, which was like a very humbling process of just like taking shit down to the studs.
Well, and this is at a point in your life where you're sort of riding high. I mean, you just talked, you're coming off this circuit, your movie comes out, you know, you're getting positive feedback. And I wanted to, before we get into like the humbling part of that and this overdose, where were you as far as like justifiably drinking? Like, right. Cause you're on top of the world. So it's like,
I was like, fuck it, man. Like I'll drink, you know, that's what I do. You know, like everything revolved around drinking. And, if I could get a little Coke, amazing, you know? So,
and you were doing Coke up until you stopped it 4.5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like, people are always like, you must've done a lot of ecstasy. I'm like, no, that was like for money. And then I fucking cocaine until the cows came home, you know, and I was around it, you know, so I'd go to, I went to, I'm not going to say his name, but he's a rock star who lives up in the Hollywood Hills. And I went to his birthday party and I just saw so much fucking blow all over the place. I thought he was a creep, but I was like, I'll just be right out of your way. And I remember just like scooping blow up and taking it home with me to do by myself. So I was definitely like a drug hoarder, and like, you know, I had to make an amends to this one. He's another musician, for like waiting for him to pass out and then like stealing his leather jacket and all of his drugs and his money.
Angie, I used to say, steal your shit and then help you look for it, right? That's what I would do.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you can't find your jacket? I wonder where it is. Weird.
Yeah.
What? You have a whole 8-ball missing? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know when you find it though.
Hey, so do you, like when you got sober or you option number two, right? You're still pretty much riding high. So how hard was that? Did you go right into either treatment or meetings after on the heels of this experience with your daughter, or did it take a minute?
You know, I had been to treatment a couple of times and I had tried, like I said, to get it together. I think the most time that I was able to string together clean, like totally clean without taking a dirty chip or a cake or whatever, it was like a year and a half. So I had the knowledge. I didn't have the will at that point. And I remember I started half-heartedly going to the rooms. I got my daughter into treatment at Breathe, and she kept relapsing. She kept fucking relapsing at Breathe. And I remember getting the call that she tested dirty for fentanyl.
How was that happening in there? I mean, I've been to rehab too, but was she able to leave and do it, or was it in there?
She is a wily little bitch. And if she wants dope, she will fucking get it. My daughter will walk up to a stranger on the street, and she's beautiful too, right? So like everyone responds to her and she's like, hey, how are you? Hey, do you have any drugs? You know, like she has no problem doing that. So,
well, I have read that you were one of the most persistent people in the universe. So maybe she gets it from mom a little bit.
Cassian said that I'm pretty fucking persistent.
Yeah.
So I guess she's inherited her tenacity from me.
Yeah.
But so at that point, I still, you know, I didn't want it for myself. I just wanted it to be a good mom. You know, I think at the end of the day, I still just really deeply bought into this narrative of being a broken, damaged piece of shit. Right. And I was like, fuck it. Like, I couldn't conceive of living sober. I couldn't conceive of being deserving of like this magical life that people had talked about, right? So I kind of half-heartedly went to the rooms just to sort of model it for my daughter. And when I heard that she relapsed on fent, I just like was clobbered to my knees yet again, right? And I remember I went out on a run. I went out, it was on my birthday. So my birthday is 3/5 and my sober date is 3/9.
Oh, wow.
So for the 4 days, I was like, it's on,
Yeah.
right? And I remember I woke up on, it was a Saturday, 3/9/19, and I reached for my phone. And normally it's like, ah, shit, like, who have I texted now? Or like, did I fuck someone? Or like, where's my card? Or I hope my card didn't get smashed, like whatever. But this time it was, I hope it's not the rehab telling me that my daughter's dead. And my addict response to that was like, you know what, Ange, you should get online and just see how hard it is to buy a gun. You need a gun, because if that happens, you're not sticking around for it. You're just going to fucking eat a bullet. And then my higher power said, that's not exactly conjuring the light, bitch. Like, there's a fucking easier way. Like, what are you doing? Don't be like so dramatic and mired in the dark. You want fucking option 1 or 2. So I went back to the rooms that I had sort of, I think I took like a dirty 90-day chip. And
Now, what for people who don't know, what's a dirty 90-day chip?
so, we mark our time with 30, 60, 90-day chips. And I drank, but I still took a 90-day chip.
Okay, yeah.
Because I would have been eligible for this chip. So I was like, fuck it, I'll take it, because I'm not going to tell everyone that I fucking drank again.
Yeah.
So I was lying, right? So it's like that uncomfortable, what is my old sponsor used to say, like, that's the worst place to have like a head full of program and a belly full of beer.
Yeah.
So it's a horrible feeling. So at this point, I just went back and I did that trust exercise where you just got to fall backwards into the rooms and hope, and just be like, hope someone catches me. And they did. How
did your approach to the program and sobriety change when you were ready?
I was fucking willing. I remember I would never take a commitment, and I'll never forget this. They're like, there's a literature commitment. The one that I fucking want the least, right?
Yeah.
Like schlepping around those fucking books like a schoolgirl. It's the last thing in the world I want to do.
Putting them out in like brochures and pamphlets.
Like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, what's happening? And
if you're just listening, if Angie's raising her hand, right? Like she's putting her hand up, like, call me, I'll do it. Yeah.
So I did what I was told. And I asked for help, and I was honest. I cried in front of people, which is very, very like not me. I got a sponsor who I still have today. I got sober in the rooms of gay AA in LA because I just felt safe there. And we all shared this sort of perspective of having been an outsider, and I just felt comfortable and taken care of. And I was like reparented. I stayed in the middle of the boat. I worked the fucking steps. I kept coming back. It's simple but not easy, right?
What do you say to people who like have achieved, a level of success like you had, and then you're kind of like floating in this rare air, but now you're having to smash your ego? How do you walk that tightrope?
Wow. I mean, I still have a massive ego in a lot of ways, but I have been humbled, and I do pray every day to set my ego aside. I think that's it's a bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow, especially like, look, if you're still caught up in addiction, you're holding on to every fucking thing with all your might, right? Because you don't realize that there's a whole other way to live. You don't realize that there's such beauty in just letting go a little, like I said, like I railed against feeling sad or grief, unbearable for me. I always felt like it was like a total well that if I fell into, I'd never fucking come out. And I was afraid, like, if I started crying, I'd never fucking stop crying. But if I learned to lean into it, because then you get to the other side, and it really does carve more capacity. I learned this lesson during my child's birth, because like she was a massive kid. She was a 10-pound, 2-ounce baby. And I was like, not prepared for what that process would look like, right? So that first contraction came and I was like, fuck me, God, like I'm twisting and kicking and I'm like, holy fucking shit. And my little voice leaned in and said, you got to lean in, you got to make friends with the pain because you're not fucking getting out of this without it. Like you need to, like, this is a process that it's a necessity to fucking experience pain, just like life, right? And it showed me this like wave cresting and breaking. Like they're like, it'll get horrible and then it'll break. Like you won't stay at that apex for that long. And it said, hold someone's hand and keep breathing. And don't use that time in between contractions to trip out about the next one. Like it's probably coming, but don't trip, like be in the moment and use that moment to really enjoy yourself, relax, have a drink of water, you know, like, and like be in the moment and enjoy that freedom from pain.
Not fearful of the next one and living in that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Cause you know,
because then you're a prisoner to that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're just worrying about like something bad's gonna happen, like probably yes, if you live long enough, something bad will happen.
Yeah.
But just be in the moment and hold someone's hand because they can't do the work for you, but it makes it a whole lot fucking better than rolling around all by yourself in the dark.
Yeah.
So
when you,
I mean,
so you mentioned having your daughter, like
yeah,
relationships, like how were for you when you were drinking and using, like how did that look? Like how did, you know,
it looked like me being a horror show. Horror show, right? And just like looking for hostages to take and then like hating them for not being the person who I thought they were, you know, just I was a fucking nightmare, you know, projecting all my shit onto other people, never taking any kind of accountability. Just I look at that girl, you know, I used to hate that girl. I used to look at her and be like, what a fucking horrible piece of shit, like breaking people's things. Like one time some guy pissed me off. He was like a Wall Street guy and I went in his closet and I cut all the legs off of all his pants and trousers and and felt justified.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
I was a fucking horror show. Horrible person. Cheated, lied, all this stuff. But I mean, this is the duality, right? Like we're hungry for fucking connection. We want love. We just don't know how to get it. And I didn't have the tools to be able to show up, right? Like if I felt bad, if you made me feel bad, that meant that I was going to rage at you.
Yeah.
I couldn't just come to you and be like, you know what, that really hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is stuff that I'm learning now.
It's still stuff you struggle with in sobriety, right? I mean, still like
Yeah.
I have to really pause when somebody hurts my feelings. I've got to like settle down before, because what I want to do, even if and it really is kind of like almost a subconscious reaction, I want to hurt back, whether that is like just totally pull away and just like vanish, but whatever, I need out of this situation because right now I'm feeling pain. I don't want to feel pain anymore. Like I need to remove rather than just hang around and be like, hey, like.
It's that kicking, right?
Yeah.
It's that same kicking motion that I did when I first had a contraction. I was like, this feels terrible. I'm kicking.
Yeah.
You know, I want it to go away. So it's that same kind of visceral reaction. So for me, it definitely is like I can be a nightmare and rage. And I'm like, you know what? Scorched earth, motherfucker. I'm burning this shit down to the ground.
Yeah.
And it's not like productive to do that. So it is a lot about learning how to self-soothe. I think to me, that's like one of the biggest fucking gold nuggets, right? Out of my sobriety is the ability to pause and to
conjure the light, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I want to talk about the movie and what, you know, it's MDMA. You can get it on Amazon Prime. You don't even have to fucking pay. Yeah. Right. So just knock yourself out. But the movie is like, so this young woman who grows up in, I guess Newark, goes to college. Now, did you go to Rutgers or Stanford?
Rutgers.
Okay. So you go to Rutgers, but you called the movie The Cardinal for, what was the name of the movie originally?
So it was Cardinal X originally because like the movie is like an amalgamation of like about 30 years of my life pieced together. So a lot of my biggest customers were at Stanford.
Okay.
So I was like, wouldn't it be great to just set it there? And Stanford was very clear that if I had used their name, they would sue me into oblivion. And they were like, your movie will never fucking see the light of day. It will never be distributed. You will be fucking so caught up in litigation. So, that's part of the reason why I used my own name, because I was like, fuck, man, I can't use this person's name or that institution's name or this, that, the other thing. So I was like, fuck it, I own my own name. I'll just use my own name.
So the movie illustrates you go to college and you need some dough, but now you go, like, you rocket into this whole other world as far as like making money is concerned. You start to sell Ecstasy and you start to produce it.
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Well, there's a scene that's like been left out where, like, we didn't have the internet back then, right? So we had to go to like the library, and we had all these like, research books and stuff like that couldn't leave the library. So I like kicked the grating out of the window and threw all these books out the window and then just studied. And I recruited someone who's not in the movie because his wife was like, if you fucking mention him, I'll kill you. But he really was like instrumental in learning how to synthesize. I mean, it's a really tough process. It's hard to synthesize something.
How much did it cost to do that?
Nothing, because I stole everything from school.
And then, so you make these drugs. How much money were you making off of the drugs?
Oh, my lawyer always tells me to fudge this point. It was a tidy sum. The IRS apparently doesn't have a statute of limitations. So
we won't talk about that then.
A good chunk of cash. It was a good chunk of cash, especially for a fucking kid.
Yeah.
Like it was a decent chunk of cash. And I got used to making money. I got used to having money. you get addicted to it. Like, you want money. I'm for capitalism with a conscience. But, I'm wildly hypocritical because, like, I live in a fucking penthouse and I like nice shoes and I like nice shit and drive a nice car. And, but I do believe that there is a lot more to life than that. But I do like to be comfortable.
So you look comfortable now. So that's good. So your addiction and you're drinking a lot in college and you're dealing a lot of drugs. What was the craziest situation that you got into in college when you're like, wow, like I am so in over my head?
When you start to when people start to get wind of my activities, and by people, I mean, other like big organized entities that, wanted to take this thing kind of like to the next level. So I found myself in a lot of like very dangerous situations where people were getting hurt, where people were, it was really frightening. And I could never show any kind of fear because I was like, fuck, man. Two things that I learned, especially with the guys who I was dealing with: never fucking get your nude photograph taken because they'll fucking think poorly of you. Don't fucking get them because they'll think poorly of you. Like, they'll just look at you differently. And never show fear. Never show fear. So I would be in situations where, like, people would be like getting really fucked up and mangled and like hurt. And I just had to like be really, luckily I had plenty of blow, which just fueled my ability to fucking, have a like be a mean little girl. Like, they loved it that I was so mean.
How much coke were you doing when you were at Rutgers during all this?
Oh gosh, I don't know. A lot. Like, people would be like, oh my God, you're a little girl, but man, you're railing that shit up. And I'd be like, yeah, that's right. Stay the fuck out of my way.
I mean, it is a decadent movie that goes dark. And then at the end, there's inspiration, and I wanted to ask you, is the reason that the movie worked for you and for people that saw it or will see it, is it because it's true? Because it's part of you? I mean, a lot of times we can, not me, but I mean, you hadn't made a movie, right? Up until this.
No, I hadn't never made a movie. I just wanted to put the truth up there, and not the truth like to the letter of the details, but like the emotional truth. Like, I wanted to put, because she was a damaged girl from the wrong side of the tracks who was desperate to fucking be as good as other people, and I think that kind of truth resonates with people, because I think that most people can remember a time in their life when they felt less than.
Yeah.
Right. So like, the woman who played the crack mom.
Yeah.
And brilliant actress, who, by the way, you can catch her in American Gods, playing the goddess of love, Bilquis.
Oh, wow.
So
There's a lot of like, notable actors in this movie.
they're fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a good judge of talent. I am a good judge of talent. And yeah, no, I casted that well, I think. People really and people also, they gave their heart to me. They really bled for me to put something beautiful on the screen. But I remember I did this like long interview with this girl. It was another podcast. And at the end, she said, I just want to tell you that Anita, the crack mom, was my mom. Like, that basically like was my story with my mom. And your movie allowed me to see more humanity in my mother. And I thought, that's a lot better than a critic's, tip of the hat to me. If it can really connect with people and help people and help spread some kind of empathy, then that's really what I did it for. Although there's still a couple of critics whose houses I want to burn down, but fuck them for not getting my genius.
Well, and that's part of like the competitive streak that makes you successful. Like, I think that's one of the things I struggle with recovery, and I really have to work extra hard in those moments where I feel like I'm being slighted or that I'm being, that's when I really am like,
Oh yeah.
Right? Because it's like, I do want to be a successful person, and I almost want to keep that energy where I'm pissed off, because that'll move me on to the next thing to stay motivated. But then it's like, all right, well, can I be consumed by this to the point where I'm like pissed off or miserable? No,
Yeah, I really do. I've reframed, because for a while, like during COVID, during the apocalypse, I bought a place in the mountains, and my kid and I, like, we spent like a good year and a half up in the mountains in this like rural mountain town. It was time well spent. It was pretty awesome. But I remember using that as an opportunity to just really be introspective and be like, what do I want to fucking do in this next act of my life? And I decided I was going to study and get my master's of family therapy. And I thought, I don't know if I really do I want to do another movie? Like, it's literally like crawling across this town naked and getting spit on to get money for it. But
you did it. You got like $1 million.
I got spit on. No. I mean, you have to be thick-skinned in this town. And I thought, maybe I just don't want to do it. Maybe I just don't want to do it. And when I came back, I pray and meditate all the time. And the guidance that I've received now is like, no, it's a really good platform to be able to help people and model a way through the dark. I do feel like that's our highest calling as artists, is to model a way through the dark. So, now that the writer's strike is over, I'm starting to have a few more talks with some people, and like, we'll see what happens. But I just figure, if it's what the universe wants me, like, if that's the best way for fucking me to be the mouthpiece and do whatever, good I possibly can, then I'll do it. But like, I don't want to do a zombie movie. I don't want to do some depiction of like, this bleak humanity where we're like turning on each other and we're eating each other and there's no hope. I'm like, I just won't do it.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of scripts that I've written. I actually, including MDMA, written as a TV series.
Oh wow.
It would lend itself well to a TV series because there's so many different backstories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I think a lot of it is, I'm just allowing myself to be guided by the universe.
That's the thing about getting sober. You become, and you mentioned it, it's like the keys to a whole another life, or I forget exactly how you worded it, but like you're tapped in to your higher power, to the sunlight of the spirit, to like all this stuff around you. So you start to make difficult decisions that are rewarding. And you're not going for, you're just not taking shortcuts.
It's not all about my ego now. I mean, I'm still, look, I got a fucking ego.
Yeah.
I'm vain. I'm all those things. But I try my very best to tame that and to rein it in and to put it to use in terms of just being of service.
What about, You talk about that being of service. Like what today, like, do you find yourself, I love the story about when you became the literature chair, but like what, because that is hardcore service, but what do you find yourself doing today in your program or in your sobriety that surprises you that, 10, 15 years ago, you never would have done?
So much, like fucking, crawl into a meeting and leading a meeting when you don't feel like it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes when people ask me to lead a meeting, I'm like, oh, fuck, really? Again? Like,
Yeah.
no. But, I was taught, my sponsor told me, like, show up, suit up, do it. I sponsor people. I try to keep my ego out of that whole process. It's a painful, painful process. I had a couple of gnarly months where like I had a sponsee go out and try to kill herself. She OD'd. I had to go and ride with her in the ambulance to the fucking hospital. And a good friend of mine, her 22-year-old son, hung himself. I think he was one of us. And I've had really dear friends go out. I had another sponsee go out who just finally found her way to treatment, thank God. But I always wanted to help people, but I wasn't grounded enough so that I'd lean, they say like scratch any fucking addict and you'll find a bleeding codependent. I would just lean in too much and I would get washed away with them. I didn't have it to give. That was basically it. Like I just didn't have it to give. So now I feel like I've done enough work to be able to show up for people in a meaningful way, but still guard my boundaries, protect myself, and to understand that I can't want it more than they do. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that was a big lesson that I learned honestly through my daughter, right? Because she relapsed over and over again. And I had to lean back, right? And understand that there's no way that I could work her program for her. And there's no way that I could micromanage it that would turn out well. And really the best thing I could do is just do the work myself and hopefully model it for her.
Yeah. And at the same time, you're uniquely qualified to get somebody through the darkness, right? As much as you can. Like you just mentioned, like that to me has been the biggest gift. I never would have ever foreseen an opportunity for me to actually help someone, like really help someone, not open the fucking door for them. Like really.
How many sponsors do you have?
I only have one right. I have one right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'm happy that I have one, but I've had more. I've had less too. But I got one right now. He keeps me busy.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough challenge to understand what's the right balance. Like my sponsees have spent the night here. That I'm like I'm kind of mommy to a lot of people, which I love.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little bit happy when my daughter is sick so she can stay over and I can feed her soup in bed. Like I practically Munchausen's. It's bad. But I have that innate, like I love doing that for people. So it's nice now that I'm balanced enough to be able to recognize when it's gonna hurt someone or when it's gonna harm someone.
Yeah.
Is this for my own ego? Is this for me, or is this really for them? So it's tough to tease all that shit out, and it's a moving target too sometimes, right? So what's right in one situation may not be right in the next situation. You just have to keep praying and asking for guidance and talking to fellows and just kind of figuring it out on a case by case basis, I feel like.
Were you surprised at the amount of women that you met that were like you in recovery? For me, that kept me out for a while. Like I'm not like them or whatever that is. I mean,
yeah,
I would imagine you roll with a pretty cool group of women.
They're fucking awesome. They're super dope.
Yeah. And like, I know that kept me, it was one of those things that I hung on to stay drunk and high for a while. Like I can't, that's lame or they don't have fun or all that bullshit that I'm using to really kill myself. And then you come around long enough and, the fog lifts and you're like, man, these are, I'm hanging out with really people who I would consider cool. Like, like, and obviously it goes way deeper than that, but yeah.
Good quality people, really quality people. When I first got sober, I was in the Bay Area, and I faulted the Bay Area with my inability to stay sober, because I'm sure it was the Bay Area's fault. And it was like, I was like, I can't find tribe. I can't, and I would look for the things that were different, right? I was looking for things that were different, and I'd be like, I can't relate to that person, or, oh, you know what? I got their number and I called them and they never called me back. Like, that happens. You have to, I tell my sponsees this, I'm like, you have to fucking go after your sobriety the same way you went after your
You got
high.
to
Chase it and fucking make it a priority, and fucking be selfish about it and guard it jealously. So when I was there, I had a really hard time finding tribe, and part of it was honestly, because I hated myself. There was still this part of myself that I fucking couldn't stand, that I hadn't made peace with. So it was probably as much me as like, and honestly, I was different, than the people. I was living in a very beautiful, very upper middle class neighborhood. We lived in this gorgeous, like 9,000 square foot home, and I'd be like, this is on paper everything I ever wanted as a little girl, yet I'm fucking miserable.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
And
a terrifying place to be.
It is. It's horrifying. And then I was like, well, the only thing I can do to fucking make myself feel better is to drink, right?
Yeah.
So when I moved down to LA, a number of things happened. Like, obviously, I got sober for real, and I found my like soul tribe, like, I just found people who, and part of it was my ability to be raw and vulnerable and tell you what's really going on in my head and my heart, and to be open to feedback, sometimes criticism. Like, I got fucking, a gay AA guy will fucking call you on your shit.
Yeah.
Like no one else in this world. So yeah, like, I'd be like, no, I don't really like drama. And my one friend would be like, oh, don't you? You really? Really? You don't? Is that true, Angie?
Yeah. So do you feel like, I think another thing that screws people up, and obviously you're an artist, was there ever a time when you thought that alcohol and drugs were fueling that creative side of you?
I did make that mistake briefly.
Yeah.
But it's total fallacy. So if anyone's listening who thinks that, it's like, you're still a creative person when you're drinking. It's just this like dark shit that you're conjuring, because for me, I just became like mired in dark energy, mired in it. And I work with this shaman, and I know it sounds very LA, but he's like, look, when we use, it rips holes in our energetic aura, and any kind of dark energy can like come and fucking take hold of you. And I really felt that, so like, the scripts I write now are wildly different than the work that I put on paper when I was using. It was always like very, very dark.
Yeah.
So like, I remember just taking one out recently and reading it and be like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, Jesus Christ, this fucking shit out of here, man. I don't want to fucking see this stupid movie made. So yeah, I feel like you bring your best version of yourself to the game when you're sober, or you have a chance at doing that. You can connect with the highest version of yourself, with your higher power, and really conjure some beauty, rather than, like, it's not like I deny that there's darkness in the world. Like, it would be an idiot. I'm certainly no fucking Pollyanna, but I love this saying, the wolf you feed is the wolf that grows. So I've made a conscious effort to feed, the good wolf, because my addict attaches to that darkness, and I know my addict wants me dead. My mentor always says this. She says, addiction is like a fucking serial killer, and it's coming after everybody we love. So we got to band up and hold hands and watch each other's backs. I do believe that.
Well, this is brilliant stuff. Last thing before I let you go, because we're coming up on the hour. What's one thing you tell, people that come to you and they're hopeless? They're like, Angie, I can't get a day, or when I get a month, I go back out. What I guess shred of your experience are you able to share with them?
I feel like if I can get through the dark, anyone can. I think all of us, I would go back to my birth and just say, like, sometimes it is so excruciating. You think that this fucking pain is never going to end. my advice is to lean into it rather than resist it, because half of the reason why you get stuck is your own resistance. I do believe that. If you're always kicking against something and you can't lean into it and move through, you're always going to be like stuck in this fucking stagnant mode where you're like shuttling from side to side trying to escape something. So if you feel hopeless, hold someone's hand and lean into that. And when you acknowledge that, I think that it starts to break up and move, and you can start to move through it. And a lot of it is also like, if you feel that hopeless, like we say in the rooms, like, let us love you until you can love yourself. You know, let us prop you up, but take your mask off, you know? And I always say this, you know, like in the rooms, it's a place where, I mean, first of all, it's great to all of a sudden feel like fresh air on your face, but it's a place where you'll be loved for it, not in spite of it, because people can see your true self. You know, you're showing up as your authentic self and you're loved for it. It's a huge gift. So that to me is like sort of the carrot that coaxes people out of that dark, dark prison.
Anything else?
And watch my fucking movie.
It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon Prime, right? And where else?
Oh, it's on, like, I think it's on Hulu. It played on Showtime for a long time, but I think it's off of there now. It's like on Vudu and all those like sort of freebie, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Amazon Prime's the easiest place to get it.
Yeah. And if you buy the DVD, I'll sign it for you.
I love it. You are a real, like, it's very obvious, like, your talents are, you know, through being an artist, but you do have that, like, you're brilliant and you're a bit of a salesperson, which is, you know, like, it's pretty good.
I'm a good salesperson. Yeah, I'm a good salesperson. I sold the shit out of my ex. I sold software.
Yeah, your ex.
I'm selling you sobriety.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're selling sobriety. Your ex helped you make this movie, right?
He did. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. That's another great like gift of sobriety is like our ability to find our way back to each other as friends. Because I actually I went back to San Francisco to exercise that city, and I met up with him and his new wife, and I saw their new place. And like at first, I was like, I'm ready to be kind of a fucking bitch about it, right? But I was like, you know what? They seem to have a really nice thing going. She's adorable. She supports him. He supports her. They make each other happy. And I told them, I was like, look, I was prepared to be like kind of a cunt and like maybe like a little jealous, but you guys got a nice thing going. So I'm really happy that, you know, we can be part of each other's lives. And his happiness is important to me.
I mean, you guys were together for more than 10 years, right?
10 years. Philly boy.
There you go.
Yeah, Philly boy. He's still got a place in Rittenhouse Square. His mom is still there.
I remember we talked about that. I love hearing that.
His brother who passed away. It reminds me of your story with your brother, but his brother was like the biggest heart in the world, Rich. And biggest fucking Eagles fan on the face of the earth. Giant heart who left too early and he was like the heart of the family. But every time I hear the Rocky song, I start to cry because I think of Rich. But I definitely, you know what, when my daughter went through that, I remember hearing Rich's voice, and Rich was like, I'm not letting her through, Ange. I'm not letting her through.
Wow.
So, thanks, Richie.
Yeah, they stay with us. All right. Thank you for making the time. I know how busy you are.
Come to LA and come hang out, dude.
Let's go. And let me know if you have any other ideas. All right.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Angie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.